Hi guys, my name is Justin Lisiaga. This is my girlfriend here, Kelly Gearing. We're here to record What's Brewing in Boston. We had some of you guys send in questions. So what we're going to do is she's going to ask me the questions. I'm going to answer them to the best of my ability and to my opinion, as my opinion. So here we go. She's going to start questions now.
What was your reaction from the game last night?
So the game, it was chippy. It was one of those old-time hockey games. We almost saw a line brawl. We almost saw a goalie fight. Gosh darn those NHL referees, they didn't let those goalies fight. I would have loved to see Tuke throw down chuck some knucks. It would have been interesting. But I think what we saw was a Bruins team that was just fighting, and I do like that they were trying to fight for the win. They were fighting when their players were getting hit. When they were making hits, they were. I like to see Nordstrom step up when they had that clean shot against Krejci. Nordstrom steps up a few weight classes and he takes the bout. I think that I love to see that from the guys. I wish they could have finished some empty net chances. If that puck doesn't go in between Pasternak's legs in the first, he probably would have scored. It was an empty net. Krejci could have scored in that same play. So obviously those chances suck. The bouncer's going to go your way. But overall, I like the effort from the team. They looked dead-legged in the second a little bit, but I mean that's what happens when you're trying your hardest to go out there and score. I thought their power play could have looked better last night, but other than that, no real no coming away from the game saying, well, this team is garbage, I can't watch them anymore. I think they definitely showed that they're willing to fight, and I do like that.
How much depth does this team have?
As far as depth goes, we're getting a chance to see the team without Bergeron, which is a big piece. I mean, he's the guy who keeps that first line going. He leads that first line on the ice every night. So without him, you get to see Pastrnak. Without him, you get to see Marchand without him. They're not together on the line. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. Bruce has been mixing it up in between the games. So I think a lot of it is they have a lot of depth in terms of their top two lines. They do need, I think, one more scorer to pair with Krejci and DeBrusk. And when Bergeron's healthy, the first line is top 5 in the league without a question. I think you definitely want to see a lot more out of your third line. Bjork just got sent down. JFK played himself out of minutes. Heinen's really the only one who has been playing somewhat decent. He had a chance yesterday that went wide in the first. But other than that, as far as depth, you don't want to see a guy like Backus down on the fourth line making $6 million a year. I think you definitely want to see a guy like that perform more. I do think, like I said, they need to address this issue through the trade market. They can't really wait, especially if they want to compete this year. With it being potentially being Chara's last year, I think you want to try your hardest to get him a win. So it's going to be interesting to see this team go and go along with the depth.
Who should the Bruins target in the trade market?
So, sorry, I have the list down here. I have guys they should target. You're going to see the rumors. Everybody's going to rumor that the Bruins should go out and make a big splash in the trade market and get Artemi Panarin, the bread man from Columbus, from Chicago. Realistically, do I think they shell out the asking amount? No. But it also depends on how desperate this team is. I think upper management definitely sees this team as a Stanley Cup contending team. So if they see that as that being the move to get them to the Stanley Cup for the next 2 years or so, of course I had to sneeze, sorry. If you see them going out for the Stanley Cup for the next 2 years or so, Panarin might be the guy for that, but I don't you got to see long term as well, and I don't know if he's the most realistic guy to go after. They have some UFAs that they can target, like Mark Stone's one of those guys who hasn't talked to upper management, Duchesne as well, both on Ottawa. The direction of that team is going south with upper management, with players. Just they're not gelling well as a whole group. The coaches aren't getting along with the players aren't getting along with the coaches. They had that whole Uber scandal early on in the year. So you might see a guy like Mark Stone just say, you know what, I need a change of scenery. I mean, he was born and grown in Ottawa. His whole playing career has been there. But he might just say, like, it's time to move on. And then Duchesne is a guy who asked to be on a playoff team. He wanted to play for a playoff team. Colorado trades him to Ottawa. Of course, Colorado makes the playoffs and Ottawa misses the playoffs then. So he's just one of those guys who doesn't perform when he needs to, but he can perform, I think, alongside Krejci. So I would like to see if they can explore that. Don't know how willing Ottawa is going to be to trade to Boston. Jordan Eberle is another guy who might need a change of scenery with their upper management, like everything being shifted around with Barry Trotz as the coach now and Lou Lamoriello as the GM. You might see them move on from a guy like Jordan Eberle just because he's going to be unrestricted at the end of the year, so they might be willing to part ways for him, depending on where their team is in the standings. More realistic guys, Derek Brassard, Kevin Hayes, Wayne Simmons. Simmons is the guy I kind of want to see him trade for. He's always been a favorite of mine on Flyers, just because he's a proven leader. He's always, I mean, not always, but he's worn the A on his chest before. So just having a guy like that alongside Krejci kind of reminds you of like a Lucic type of build, and I think he would produce more than a lot of the guys that I named, just because he's one of those guys who gets down in the crease and he will score that goal. And he's not going to snipe a goal in like Panarin will, but I do think if you give him the chance, he's going to get down in the crease, score those goals, and I think that's what the Bruins need on that second line, because they kind of have their sniper in Jake DeBrusk.
How much more can David Pastrnak improve, if at all?
So, with Pastrnak, I mean, 19 goals. It took him all the way until January of last year to do that. Like, he didn't reach that mark until January. So he's on pace to already outscore himself in terms of goals last year. With him, I have like minor critiques. I know you might not want to listen to him. He's your favorite player, but I would love to see him just do a little bit less with the puck at times, and sometimes do a little bit more with the puck, like just shoot it when you need to shoot or pass when you see an opening. I think a lot with him is just making those decisions. Sometimes he makes them well, and you see it. He scores goals. He has 19 of them. He's, I think, tied for the NHL league, or might be in the top 3. But that's something that he's always done well, I thought. Since he came into the league, he's been better at it. Another thing is I just would like to see him grow as a leader. He's going to be on this team for the next 6 years until 2022, until he gets re-upped for another contract. And if he can grow into a leader and take on that leadership role, I think I would love to see that from him, just because you don't see many snipers, being the leaders on their teams, just because they don't lead. They're just offensive. I would just love to see him do that and improve a little bit defensively with his stick and get back on the back check. There's some plays where you could see him kind of phoning it in, but other than that, I think he's a great player, and the Bruins got him at a bargain at 25 when they drafted him.
What is going on with Tuukka's early struggles?
So Tuukka, I think him, along with some other goalies in the league like Varlamov, and I don't want to say Bob. Bob has proven himself to be world class, but I think Tuukka is one of those goalies who he's a streaky goalie. If he's on fire, he is, I think, top 10 in the league, maybe even top 5 in the league when he's on fire. but when he's struggling, you definitely can see it, and you saw it early on in the season. Last year, as a reminder, he started the season 4-8-2 with an .896 save percentage and a .901 save percentage in November. It's just, I don't know, maybe it's just the way he starts the seasons. I would wish he would start them well and he would have the urgency to start them well, but he's proven himself on the back end of seasons. In last season as well, he went, for the rest of the season from November on, he went 21-7-3 after November, December on. And he had a great season last year. He was considerably one of the best. I think he was getting a large workload, and that's kind of why you saw him dip off in the playoffs. Just the workload. He was literally just on the ice almost every other game. It wasn't even like close. He was getting the most time on ice for, I think, most of the goalies. So I think a lot what you see from him is he's a streaky goalie. Hopefully he's on fire. So far since he came back from his family issue, he's had I think points in every game he started in, and that's going to be good for when you see him. Actually, no, he didn't get points yesterday, but I think that's what you see. Like, if you can see that from him, you're going to love it, because he's one of those goalies who, when he's on fire, like I said, top 10, top 5 in the league.
Is there a goalie controversy brewing on this team?
As far as goalie controversy, no. I don't see it unless Halak can push him all the way into the brink and he can be one of those players. I don't think Halak is going to take over as starting goalie. I do think, if Tuukka begins to struggle again, you could see one brewing, but I just don't think they have it. I don't think he's going to struggle as much as he did in the beginning of the season, later on in the season, because he just hasn't shown that in his career to struggle that late into the season. Like I said, when he catches fire, he's usually on fire, and I don't know. I think Tuukka, it happened last year. People were calling for his head last year with Dobby in the start of the season, and then you saw Dobby's plays slip, and when Tuukka picked it up, everybody just stays shut. Usually that's how. That's just Boston media. They're just going to attack Tuukka. They need someone to attack on every sport. I think you see it. David Price on some, Brady on the others. He'll be okay. I don't think we're going to see a goalie controversy.
Will the Bruins make a big trade or a depth trade at the deadline?
As far as depth trade goes, yes, I do think they're going to go after some smaller guys. They made trade for a Wingle last year. I don't know if they're going to need to go after any defensemen this year like they did last year. But I do think they're going to need some help up front. Definitely some veteran leadership, especially of guys like Bajork or Donato don't pan out. Just because you need guys to show up and know that, hey, we're in the thick of a playoff race. We need to go out and score. We need to check hard. And I think sometimes with the younger guys like Donato and Bajork, you're going to see, I don't want to say shy away from the checks. They're going to bring a lot of energy to the game, but they're going to try and score, and that's what they're there for. And they're not going to focus on doing the mental toughness of they're not going to focus on the mental toughness of the game and back check when they need to back check, and show that they have a good stick when they have a good stick, or get in front of the net when they need to clear the front of the net because their defenseman is below the line. Both of their defensemen are below the line. So I do think you're going to need a veteran for that. But I hope I see a trade to address that scoring issue on the second line alongside Krejci, just because you can't keep slotting in Heinen there. Heinen's no Simmons, Heinen's not Panarin, or any of the guys that I mentioned earlier. So I do think I want to see one of those guys that I mentioned off the list. If you can get one of those guys alongside Krejci, I think that's as much as they need to do as far as depth.
Do you think Anders Bjork will come back up again this year?
Yes. I think we're going to see Bjork definitely back up again, along with Donato. Like, Donato got sent down. He was struggling, obviously, in the first few games that he played. Went down to the AHL for 10 games, had 9 points in 10 games, and then he got an immediate call-up. Just because you need to find your confidence sometimes. Some younger players lose their confidence. So I do think we'll see him back up. He just has to play better. Definitely has to play better. I would love to see him get a chance with that Bergeron line if he came up and he was playing like he was in the beginning of the season, because I do think he wasn't catching breaks in the beginning of the season. He should have had goals, and he got goals called back on him. The puck wasn't bouncing his way, and I mean the numbers are going to show what they show, but sometimes it doesn't show the whole picture, and that was kind of where he struggled a little bit, but I do think he'll be back up.
Should the Bruins move on from Backes?
So David Backes, he's one of those guys that, man, you love watching him. I loved watching him when he was in St. Louis. He just was one of those guys he would get in deep on a forecheck, finish a check, and make you know he finished that check. And at first, when the Bruins signed him, I was like, yes, like, this is the guy they needed to fill that Lucic hole, that Lucic size hole that they lost when they traded him. And then the numbers came out, the deal number, the contract numbers, and you see that it's a 5-year, $6 million per year, and you kind of like, that's not a good deal. He's 34 years old, 5-year deal. He's going to be playing till he's 40. I don't know if that's a deal that you want to make. I mean, he has, you can see that he's trying his hardest out there. It's just a matter of, is it translating to numbers? And as far as I know, it's just not. I know he scored yesterday, but the goal was fluky to me. He scored a backhand from the dot, and that was a weird goal to go in. I think with him, you wanted to see him on that second line with Krejci, checking hard like Lucic did, but he just wasn't that, and you don't pay a guy $6 million a year to sit on the fourth line. You just don't. So we might see, hopefully, I do hope they find a way to either get more out of him, or if they cannot get any more out of him, if they squeeze as much as they can and they just don't like what they see, hopefully move on and be able to trade him at the deadline to a team that maybe can get more out of him, or just for some reason wants to eat a contract that they don't need, or that they need to meet the cap requirement. But I don't know. Backes is just one of those guys that I wish he would have performed as he was being paid to do. So I don't know.
When the D-men are all healthy, who gets the healthy scratch?
This is hard. I don't think it's gonna be a while for them all to get healthy, with Miller just going down with that larynx injury. But I do think when they all come healthy again, it's probably gonna be Griezlick. I just haven't seen enough from guys like. It's just not. You don't pay John Moore in the offseason for him not to play, and he's been pretty good for the Bruins. Torrey Krug, you can't replace him offensively. You can say Griezlick can, you can say he can, but he's just not. Like, I try not to show my bias with Torrey Krug. He's my favorite player, but offensively, we saw a play in the Maple Leafs game where he dished it to Pasternak, and it was the tightest seam that you can pass to. I just can't see Grease making that play. So I think he sticks around, and then the other top four guys like McAvoy, Chara, Carlo, you're not going to touch them. And then you pretty much have to see if Miller's healthy, you want him on your team. He's just one of those guys who provides you strength and durability on the back end. And you need that going down the road into the playoffs and facing off against a team like Toronto or Washington or Tampa Bay.
All right, last question. Where do you see the Bruins finishing this season?
So for them, I don't know. I think if they stand pat at the deadline and they don't really make any big moves to address that second line scoring issue, I do think, I don't really want to call it an issue. It's not really that big of an issue. It's just one thing that I think if they address it, they can push to be second in Atlantic and be serious Stanley Cup contenders. But since if they don't address that issue and they just go depth-wise and hope for the best, I do think you see them steady at third, maybe even fourth, the way Buffalo's playing. Buffalo's playing out of their mind. I mean, Toronto just got better because they had Nylander sign a deal. So by putting ink to the paper, they just got better, like in the snap of a finger. And then Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay. So I do think the Atlantic is very competitive. The Canadians are right on the Bruins. So I do think that they might finish third if they stand pat. Could be fourth, could be fifth. It all depends. If they don't make the right moves at the deadline, I do think they might be out of luck big time when it comes to making the playoffs this year, just because the Metro doesn't have the strongest thing, but you have to send, I think, is it two teams? I think 2 teams from the Metro and 3 teams from the Metro. And then you're kind of balancing on that wild card spot. I mean, they're going to be a very good wild card team, but you don't want to play in the wild card. You want to be at home. You want the advantage there. And especially for this team, I think they can compete with the Torontos and the Tampa Bays. They just need to stay healthy and make the right moves at the deadline to do so. And who knows, we could be seeing this team in the Stanley Cup final this year. So that was it for the early season questions. We're about a third through the season. You might see us back. I don't know. It's just time scheduling. So thank you for watching and have a great day. Go Bruins.